So today, we have a very unique presenter today, and he's going to make this interactive. So I think that's pretty cool versus you don't get a lecture. You might appreciate that. Don't know. So Stephen Miesowicz is a friend of my friend, Beth. So this is her husband. And, sometimes you get these couples who just kind of like do everything. And they're kind of like that. So Stephen's rather unique in that he's led investment opportunities. So he's been on the side deciding whether or not people get money. He's an engineer. So he's built quite a few physical products. And he also happens to have a financial background as a CFO. So he's not your typical, I don't know, I can't put you in a single category. I don't know exactly how to do that.
Nope.
So he's rather unique. So he's going to run a workshop with you guys today. And I'll let him decide how he wants to do that. I'm going to have to duck out at 5 for a few minutes because we have a visitor in the center, but I will be back towards the end. Take it away, Stephen.
All right. So let's see who's here. There's not that many people, so why don't you just tell me who you are and why you're here? So by force. All right, that's fine. That's good. Who are you? Okay. Yeah. I'll explain that later. Who are you? Okay. All right. Tall person. Sorry. Action. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Suppose we'll go that. Who are you? Yeah. Big hits. All right. You. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I definitely have a different point of view. You. You. I guess we've already met, but still. Hear about that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Maybe introduce yourself. Well, I know who you. I know our conversation, but for everybody else, maybe everybody knows you. Maybe you all know each other. I don't know. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. You? Yeah. Friends. Okay. All right. Good. I like the forced. That's good. Yeah. My experience has been schizophrenic at best. I mean, I never have wanted to do any particular one thing. I put in my little thing I wrote. It's a good thing I read through it quickly because I've never had a career goal in my life. I just do stuff as it comes along. I can't, if I have, boy, I don't know what that would be like, but it'd be scary to me. I've been lucky enough to be standing in the right place in the right time when people needed people to do stuff. I am not the entrepreneur. I'm the guy behind the entrepreneur to make sure they have enough money to keep doing what they do. That's what I do. So that turned into doing a whole bunch of stuff, turning around companies, running them, making more money, ending up running a tech company where all we did was have people pitch us, and we would invest in the development of a product for the right to produce it for a period of time at an agreed to price. That would be our return on investment. My job was to be the one that picked them for the company. So everybody that worked there, their future depended on the decisions I made. The shareholders did not want to make those decisions. They were just too afraid of those decisions. So that's why I was there. That would keep me up at night because really, you're going to let me, who has no career goals at all, who's done all this stuff, decide whether or not we have a future. That's pretty crazy. I better do some homework. And I just fell into that job because of a conversation I had with somebody who knew somebody else that said, you ought to talk to this guy. And that's how that all happened. And that's pretty much the way my whole career has been. I like making things. I put in my little thing, my note. I started engineering school to keep my dad off my back. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still am chasing the dream of writing and recording music. I've done 4 albums. I'm working on another one. Yeah, thanks. Most of what I do is what you'd call alternative. Maybe most of it. A lot more toward the folk side these days because the singer that I do my most work with is my niece, and it's easier to go do a show with just 2 people. So an acoustic guitar and a voice is pretty easy, and I guess that's kind of folk music. We had a working band in Detroit. We played a lot of the big festivals. We opened for the Guess Who one year at one of the festivals in Detroit. That was the biggest show we ever played. Had people carry our stuff, had a trailer. It was pretty cool. Told them no blue M&Ms, that kind of thing. But that's really what I wanted to do. And my parents thought it was a terrible plan, just awful. Do not do that. Whatever you do, just go get some education. So I struggled for years in engineering school until I took some classes about human behavior as they related to manufacturing. I worked in a factory punching buttons 15,000 times a day on a broach machine being soaked in cooling oil. And I decided I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So that's when I started taking my schooling seriously. So you want to learn. I put this thing on the board. This is a little manufacturing exercise, but it has nothing to do with manufacturing. I want to see how you think. That's what I'd like to do. So I'm going to break you up into groups. I'm going to first explain what we're going to do, and then you're going to have to work in small groups and come up with an answer. So this is what is called a routing in manufacturing. Raw material starts at the bottom, it moves up through a bunch of machines, and it goes out into 2 different products that have demand. Product P, you get $90 a unit, 100 of them per week. Product Q, $100 a unit, 50 of them a week. That's your demand. You with me so far? Got it? So you have 4 machines, A, B, C, and D. You got 1 each. In the routing, raw material that costs you $20 for this product here goes to machine A for 15 minutes, then machine C for 10 minutes, then it goes to machine D for 10 minutes. You add on a little purchase part, and then out the door it goes. After raw material 2 went through B for 15, C for 5, put together here in D, and out the door becomes a product P. See how that works? With me so far? Some nodding of heads would be good. Okay. Same thing over here. So you need raw material 2 and 3 to go up here to become a Q. You need raw material 1 and 2 to go up here, this purchase part, and out the door it goes. You're going to run this factory for 1 week, 5 days, 8 hours a day, 2,400 minutes. The good news is you don't have to worry about downtime. Machines always work. Instantly, parts transfer from one machine to another. No problems with quality. What I want to know, if you have operating expense of this factory of $6,000 per week, how much money can you make in a week? So let's divide you up into groups. You 3, let's see how this is going to work. You 4 now are a group. You 4 here are a group. You're going to get grouped in with these guys, and you got 5. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes. Get out whatever you have that you think will solve the problem. You can come up to the board, use the dry erase stuff, whatever. Move somewhere and work together, and go to work. Would you like the teamwork part of this to end, or do you want to keep going? All right, sit down. Let's work through it together. Yeah, I was exactly. No. I'll take care of it. So one of the funnest things, I haven't done this in a long time, by the way, and one of the funnest things about having done this before is to watch how people do what they do. Whether they go off by themselves and try to solve the problem, whether you try to figure out how to find out if anybody in your team has ever done anything like this, or just to see how it is. And the whole point of it here is to see how you're thinking for two reasons. One, we're going to work through this so you can kind of see one of the ways to figure out how you're going to make money. The other is the team dynamic, right? How many of you are running companies or want to be involved in companies that are going to have more than one person? Right? So that whole process that just happened here is something that's really what you manage. In all of the times, in the last 3 companies that I've been responsible to turn around, because usually if you see me, it's because you're about to be bankrupt, you are bankrupt, or something worse has happened. And investors have said, hey, just this guy's coming in and you're not in charge anymore. And I typically say the same thing to everybody when I start. I'm not going to make a single decision, not one. So if you want to be the CEO that makes all the decisions, good luck. Because my experience is that is a recipe for disaster. Your job is to be responsible to make sure all decisions get made. And you're not going to do it yourself. And if you are, just go in a room, do your thing, see if you can make money. What you're really doing is managing the resources of people to do what you want to accomplish. And hopefully they all know what the goal is. I didn't hear one group try to figure out what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to figure out? What the pricing is, what the gross margin is. Who's heard the word about gross margin? How do you calculate it? Okay. All right, good. Gross margin is typically defined as selling price less raw material. Some people put in labor and all that other nonsense, but let's just... You don't get to talk now. I have the microphone. Who's the statistician here? No? Yeah, right. So you and I probably have a nice conversation. My hobby is economics. Economics is data and data analysis. That's what I do. Yeah, I get that question all the time. That is what I do for a hobby. That is how weird I am. Schizophrenic career, strange little person in the corner with numbers. That's what I enjoy doing. I'd rather do that and walk my dog than be in a group of people, because that's just not my thing, right? But what are you trying to accomplish? Gross margin, selling price minus raw material. Let's work through this over here. So for P, what's the selling price? Per unit. $90. What's the raw material that it takes to make a P? 20, 40, 5. 45. Equals what? $45. What about Q? What's its selling price? 100? What is the raw material cost? $40. Equals what? 60? Did I get that right? So what does that tell you? What? Okay. Why do you think it's profit? So all it is gross margin. You still haven't paid your people your $6,000. You got to fund your business before you have profit. So I got $6,000 I'm ignoring, but you're on the right track. So what does this tell you? Does this give you any information? By the way, information is the answer to a question. Anything else is just a bunch of data. It's not information until it's the answer to a question. We still haven't asked the right question here, but we'll get to that in a minute. Well, we know our gross margins here. Is there anything here in this? Is there any clues here that tell me I have a problem? Is there anything that says here? Is there any clue to indicate that I might not be able to sell 100 a week and I might not be able to sell 50 a week? Time to produce, right? Why don't we figure out if we can make them all? Because then it's an easy calculation. If I have enough machine time to make them all, then make them all and see how much money you have after you sell them all, subtract your $6,000, and that's how much money you should be able to make. Remember, the question was, how much money can you earn or make in a week? So let's see if we can make them all. How do you do that? So for machine A, how much time do I need on machine A? I need 15 minutes here, and I need 10 minutes there. All right? So I've got, for 15 minutes, with a demand of 100, right? 15 times 100, that should tell me how many minutes I need on A for P. Does that make sense to everybody? Got it? Then I got to add something else. What about product Q? I need 10 minutes, 50 a week, right? 10 times 50. So what's that? 1,500 plus 500 equals 2,000. Any problem with machine A? All right, let's do B. Somebody give me the numbers for B. So for P, I need 15 minutes, right? 15 times, what, 100 for P? Times 100. Plus, I need A and or B in two different places. I got 30 minutes over here, right? To make every Q. It's got to hit machine B twice. Got it? Does it make sense? So that's 30 minutes times, what's the demand, 50? So this is 1,500 plus 1,500 equals 3,000. What does that tell you? Can't do it. I can't make them all. At least not with B. Let's do C. Let's get the numbers for C. For every P, I need 15 minutes times 100. That's 1,500 plus and I need 5 for Q plus 5 times 50 is 250 equals 1,750. Any problem there? No. D. What's D doing? 10 times 100 plus 5 times 50. So that's 1,000 plus 250 again equals 1,250. Any problem with D? This is why nobody wants to work in manufacturing, because this is the kind of nonsense you got to do all the time. So let's see if this helps us. I know I can't make them all. So which ones should you make? I got 1 vote for P. I got 1 vote for Q. Somebody tell me, did you say P? Who said P? Why did you pick P? You don't know why. Okay, so as a guess, it's So you don't want to put P at the priority because you're only generating $45 per unit, and Q looks better to you because you're doing 60 per unit. Okay. Yep. Right. Go ahead. All right, let's hold that thought. What did you think? Okay. So I'm going to give you the secret to the problem because there's some other stuff we want to talk about today. This is about how you think. It's not about this problem. I've said that several times. I want that to sink in. When you're running your business, I don't care what business it is, you always need to know what your constraint is. That which constrains you from doing what you want to do. The goal of any business is one thing in my mind. This is just Stephen, not anybody else. Make more money now and in the future. I know it sounds greedy, sounds mean. When you make money, you've got freedom. You've got freedom to choose what to do with your wealth, your resources. You want to change the world? A lot easier to do when you've got some money behind you, right? One of the companies I'm on the board of directors for right now, they have this vision of what they're going to do from a philanthropic standpoint. Right now, we're not making any money, but they want to go and change things and work in these spaces. And I don't know, maybe they've been reading too much about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But my point is, we have to make this business generate so much cash that you don't know what to do with it all. Because then you can go do whatever you want to do. Go change the world, make things better, invest in stuff. I don't know, send kids to school. I don't care. But that's a resource. It's a currency you can do something with. Why do I say make more money? I always want to be continuing to improve everything now and in the future. When you sit in the big job and people who come to work for you, their futures depend on your decisions, you better be thinking about the future. You never run a business for today. It's always for the future. Today's already happening, right? So here's how you do this. Most people pick this and say, gross margin's bigger, make as many of those, and then get as many as you can on the other. It's a natural inclination. It's exactly the wrong answer. You need to know how much money you can make for every minute that you're using the constraint. So let's use the gross margin to our advantage. Let's pick the big one, Q. How many minutes in total? I got $60 I generate. How many minutes on my constraint for Q? 30? That's $2, right? Per constraint minute. What about P? P is 45. How many minutes on the constraint? 15? A 3? What's that? So if I'm going to my P, right? B is my constraint. Yeah, that's the one that I have the limit on. I need 600 more minutes. So for every P, I only need 15 minutes on B. So I divide my throughput or my gross margin by 15 to say for every minute that's running, every minute I'm working on product P, I'm generating $3 per constraint minute. In operations research, this is called a boundary condition. This is the mathematics that defines the maximum output of this little system. And that's all you need to know. It's no more complicated than that. I sat in a whole semester of linear programming to learn this. Correct. And why does that worry me? Okay. So this is the way you guys are. I understand the young people, the cutthroat. Why would I care? Because you don't know if you can do it again. You made the mistake, you got the right answer. Woo, let's promote him. Anybody want to hitch their wagon up to somebody who didn't know how they did it? Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, if that's what I wanted to hear. That's part of the thinking. When you're sitting in the big chair, what's the most important thing you do with your human resources? Pick them. Pick the right ones. Pick the people who know what they're doing. Or pick the ones that you believe will learn it. I say frequently, let's go make all the mistakes we need to make to learn what we need to learn to make this thing work. We are going to make mistakes. Don't think you're going to get it right the first time. If you do, great. I'm happy for you. Please write about it, get a book. That'll be fun. But many of the high net worth individuals that I have worked for thought that lightning would strike twice because they did it the first time. And wasn't this exciting and great? So I'm just going to invest in stuff. One of my favorite jobs was 7 years this high net worth individual kept pumping money into this company thinking it was going to do the same thing the last one did. Couldn't figure it out, hired all kinds of people, spent money, was deeply in debt. His private banker met with me on day number 2 and said, I don't want to call this loan. I'm hoping you know what you're doing because I have to call the loan soon. And he might take his business elsewhere, and he's got enough money to pay it. I just don't want to ask him. Yeah, 7 years. You know how long it took to get that to profitability? Just take a guess. Just pick a number. 13 years. How long did it take for me to get it to profitability? 6 weeks. What's that? Now we're getting to the real question. I want to address that. Who did I fire? I fired the guy they hired to run it because he had no experience running it. It wasn't the rest of the people. Second, I led him to the door and said thank you and it's wonderful. And by the way, one of the CEOs that hires me to fire their people, I charge $600 a person. It's terrible. It's horrible. She's in the public relations business and advertising. She just can't fire people. So she'll fly me in to fire people for $600 a piece, but she leaves the building. Can't do that. She'd been in business for 40 years, so to go figure. But none of the people had to change except the one leading it because he didn't know how to do it. Didn't know how to do it the first time, didn't know how to do it the second time, couldn't figure out, couldn't tell you what he was doing or why he was doing it. The most important thing I do is I tell everybody what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. There's no secret sauce to protect, right? After I escorted the guy out, I sat down with the team and said, what would you do if you had a bag of money and this building? What would you do? Got in front of a whiteboard, wrote it all down, put it in rank order, and started doing it. We made a whole bunch of mistakes because they all had their pet projects, right? I know what I want, and it's this. Well, all right, let's try it, see what we get. We had to go make the mistakes we needed to make to learn what we needed to learn. But it only took us 6 weeks to get to profitability because it wasn't hard. We had plenty of orders, needed to figure out how to, you know how bad the thinking was? We made signs for the beer, wine, and spirits industry to advertise drinking, which was amazing to me. They're in bars screaming at you, have more drinks. You're already in the bar. I don't know why you're advertising, but fine. That's what we do. So they had all this inventory that they had bought, these LEDs, and LEDs came down in price dramatically over a period of time because they became in more demand. More demand lowers the price. They would keep these high-priced LEDs in inventory, go buy new ones to build the signs because it made the bill of material lower. So what's wrong with that thinking? By the way, the guy I fired, that was his idea. He may have. He wanted to show that he was managing gross margin, selling price minus raw material, but he'd already paid for those LEDs that were in inventory. They'd been sitting there for months and sometimes years. They were free. They've already been paid for. So just use them. By changing, there's two kinds of constraints in the world: mental and physical. The physical ones are the easiest ones to change. I can buy more machines. I can get a bigger building. I can buy stuff. But the thinking, that's what you're doing when you're running a business. You're responsible to send all the neurons to fire whatever they're supposed to fire and do what they're supposed to do. So my suggestion from my experience is do it in the open, have nothing secret, use a group process, right? Now, you didn't know you were coming to do a workshop and actually do calculations. And you didn't get put on teams of people you would have picked. But when you have that opportunity, take a minute to say, does anybody know anything about what we're trying to do here? And if not, let's talk about how we go about it. When I was a kid, my dad worked at a company, small manufacturing and engineering company that made stuff for the space thing, right? And he would go to Cape Canaveral and they'd shoot off a rocket and it'd explode all over the place, and he'd come back and tell me about it. And I'm like, I want that job. They're blowing stuff up. That sounds like a lot of fun. And so I was so interested in space. I just read everything I could read about it. I watched everything I could watch when we finally got a TV. And the one thing that struck me was an interview with the guy from Apollo 13, the one that they made the movie about and almost died and all that stuff. Somebody asked him a question and said, if you had 10 seconds of air left in your spacesuit, what would you have done? What would your answer be? All right, what would your answer be? Okay, that's a wish. Nice. How about you? Don't know. That was kind of where I was as a kid, until I heard the answer. And I've remembered it to this day. I would think for 9 and then take action. I would have a plan. I don't know if that plan would have been to open my thing and end it all really quickly, but I would take the time to think. That's your job when you're running a company. It's your job. Thinking is a process. Don't think it happens by accident. I liked being in Germany when I was with Rockwell International. I liked being around the German engineers. We will do things this day. This is what it was. When you're on the Autobahn, use the zipper method. You try that here and you get killed. It just doesn't work, right? It's quite a commentary on society. Traveling all over the world. By the way, I do not like traveling. I've got 1.5 million actual miles in the air. I haven't liked one of them. I travel best with my little 13-pound dog. She sits right on my lap. When I start getting crazy, she jumps up here and we get to work on a massage on her shoulders and I calm right down. I do not like flying. But one of my favorite places to go was Germany. They had a process for creativity. And they brought me to this product design review and they said, oh, okay, we're going to have this big review and we're going to go into all kinds of details. And that's the first 2 days. It's all current products, and we're going to talk about how we're going to make more money, save money, do this engineering stuff, new product. And then we're going to do a day of creating. And that's it. Day of creating. I don't know what that is. The first 2 days are just grueling. Calculations and how much of this and all this crap. You guys are going, oh my God, I don't want to think about that ever. That's why I'm going to make my own company. I'm going to make a lot of money. Somebody else do that, right? So we go through this tedious detail, and my job as a plant manager was to sit there and say, are you kidding me? What are you designing? I got to put this together. That's insane. That was kind of my job. It was me becoming CEO before I got the job where all I did was listen to pitches from nice people with good ideas. And then the third day, when they come in the room and they start drawing these things and talking about possibilities and innovations that I've never heard of. And the first time I said, oh, wait a minute, how's that going to snap together? They said, we don't discuss how it's made. We discuss what it could be. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Where is that in engineering school? All you learn in engineering school is limitations, definitions, and calculations. That's pretty much all I got out of that mess. And here's a bunch of people that just a day before were just torturing me with crazy ideas about these, things that I could have. I had such a hard time making the designs they made. And then they come in the room and they've got these ridiculous ideas that were absolutely gorgeous. They were some of the best stuff I'd ever seen because they had a process. They went into a room and they said, if you had no limitations, if you didn't have to make it on a machine, if you didn't stamp it, drill it, mill it, what would you put in this thing? How would it work? I saw some of the most great innovation I ever saw. I like being there for that reason. They had a process for everything. Running a business is a process. If you don't have a plan for every day, then I wonder how that's going to work out. Because there isn't a single day that I don't go into whatever office I'm in, doing whatever I'm doing. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I am very deliberate about what I do, what I say, how I say it. I pay strict attention to what people say. I do not like to repeat myself. A lot of times I have to. People just annoy me. They just do. But somewhere along the 61 years I've been on this rock, I've got comfortable with that. Maybe I'm not cut out to be a sales type person. I'm really not. But I can do it for short stints. I can do it if I have to. If the company depends on it, then I will go sell. And I will channel my favorite sales guy, Jeff Sherritt. He's an incredible guy. I can even imitate him. I can get his voice. And I'll go in and I'll be Jeff for as long as it takes to get that contract. And don't ever leave a meeting with a customer without asking for an order. Ever. Ever. It's the most important thing you do. Generate revenue. Make more money now and in the future. Let's talk about, how much more time do we have? I'm kind of prattling on more than I thought, but still. Okay, let's talk about product development. You're all going to make something, even if it doesn't go on a machine. And when I was working at BGM Engineering, we did a lot of work in the autonomous vehicle space, and I'd go and talk about to industry groups, customers, high-level meetings, and I would give this little speech called "People Must Die." It's the only way this thing is going to work. People are going to die. So when you get on the road today, how is it that you get home in a vehicle that is incredibly unsafe, traveling at more speed than your body can withstand? And I made airbags and seatbelts, and I've watched more film of crash test dummies flying around than you can imagine. If you got dropped from your car going 40 miles an hour, there wouldn't be much left of you. How is it that you get home safely? Pretty much most of the time. How does that happen? Thinking about how to drive. How do you know how to drive? You learned, somebody taught you, and then you did it. There's rules and regulations and you follow them. By and large, people do. That's how you get home safe. Everybody pretty much follows the same rules. Red light, you stop. Yellow light, go faster. Green light, proceed through, right? Right away cannot be taken. It can only be given. You probably didn't know that. Maybe you do. It's an interesting thing. I think more people should think about it, particularly the people I saw driving here today. The point of that is, everyone on the road generally follows the same rules. So now we want to throw in a bunch of autonomous vehicles with people like you and me. We make mistakes. We become distracted. We're in a hurry. We're not happy. Just got a bad phone call. I'm reading that text. I'm thinking about what happened last week, thinking about what I'm going to do when I get there, and I make a mistake and I hit somebody. Now you take a bunch of cars that don't have the same set of rules as you and I, and then you throw them on the road. Sooner or later, somebody's going to step in front of a car because they're on a phone and they're in a hurry and they don't want to wait for the walk sign, and they're going to get splattered by a car that thought it could go through, despite the fact that it has all the cameras that you can probably imagine and all the algorithms and the ability to slam on the brakes. You're still going to get killed because it won't stop fast enough. And that's what happened in the first most publicized accident. Somebody stepped off the curb. The car hit him. They shouldn't have done that. The car didn't know that. Until every single car follows the same rules, people are going to die. That's how simple it is. But that's the way we develop products. Anybody ever heard of the de Havilland Comet? The most innovative aircraft after World War II. Jet engines integrated into the wings, really a cool, sleek design. I believe it was September of 1954. Took off from some city in Italy. 26 minutes later, it broke into a bunch of pieces and 35 people plummeted to their death. Terrible, horrible. The most innovative designed jet you could imagine just fell apart. Why do you think that happened? Could be. It's actually quite spot on. New materials. Never made one before. Most importantly, the engineering that went into it. It's a new industry. Jets didn't exist before. We knew how to make prop airplanes pretty good. They're slow, they're not pressurized, whatever. But now we got to do a whole bunch of other stuff. We got to stick these engines that are more powerful into them. We got to feed it more fuel. We've got to pressurize the interior. We've got to cycle it. And we got to do all of that with the same set of engineering tools we already have. Not a good idea to do that without a lot of testing. And unfortunately, the aluminum they used on the exterior was very thin, strong, good material. Then they riveted it. Typical thing to do with aircraft exteriors. Those rivets in manufacturing caused little, small, tiny fractures. The cycle of pressurization and flying and bouncing around made those fractures get bigger and bigger to the point where when this aircraft started to fall apart, one of them finally went too far. But they did another thing. They made windows square. Everybody has been on an aircraft? Yep. Look at the window. Does it have square corners? Thank you, de Havilland Comet. When two corners come together, when two lines come together, it's what's called a stress riser. All that bending goes right into that corner. That corner is a single point. All that force is in there. It becomes infinite. When that fracture occurred, all those windows, all those square corners those engineers designed precisely just fell apart. Do you think the airline industry started designing things differently thereafter? Yep. But people had to die. That's what happens when you stick them up in the air and you really don't know how many times you can cycle this thing because you've never done it before. You test your brains out, you do it. I mean, we do it. The auto industry tests like crazy. But you never know exactly how that one is going to behave. But you try to do it in the best way possible, right? And over time, when you get experience, you know how to make things change. It's sort of like you've all heard about the space shuttle that blew up, right? It wasn't designed to take off on a cold day. O-rings don't work well when it's cold. Nobody ever thought it would be cold. It's Florida. Why would you design something to launch that's anything but warm? And that's how that happened. So the product development process follows the following cycle. It's not that exciting. DV, 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 and what I call MV. And there's the last one, the most important one. customer be? Concept validation, design validation, process validation, manufacturing validation. That's what that means. You follow the same basics in software design as you do in manufacturing design. Anybody ever heard of a system requirements document? Largely used in software development, right? Generally starts with a business requirements document, then we have a system requirements document. We write everything down we want this software to do, so that when the programmer programs it, they know what it's supposed to get done. So that they can say, okay, I can make all those things happen, and here's all the other stuff I got to do at the same time. And So concept validation is when you have your prototype of whatever it is you're going to do, and you show it to somebody. It doesn't look anything like what it's going to be finally, but it's ready to go. That can be code, that can be whatever you want. Design validation is when you actually spend time figuring out, all right, if I'm going to make this in mass production, medium mass production, anything, how am I going to design it? How am I going to design it so it can be made? And you go through that process, which includes testing, because if you're doing software, you're doing testing. If you're doing hardware, you're doing testing. There's a lot of testing to figure out, do I have square windows that are going to blow up and drop people from the sky into their death? Don't want that. So we test, right? Process validation is after you got done with your design validation, and then I go make a bunch on whatever equipment, or I test the software in the intended environment. I made airbags for a lot of years, airbags, seatbelts, steering wheels, that was a TRW. We used to change our code so often it just made us sick, because why didn't we think about all this stuff? Well, who knew that somebody would sit in a car at roll test at the end of an assembly line? It's called roll test. They put it on this dynamometer, they start at the car, they run it through the gears, all this diagnostic stuff happens, and they figure out it should be shipped to you. One day some guy said, I don't know, I don't feel like doing this job, I hate doing this job. Let's just see what happens when I cycle the key 4 different times. Airbag blew. Punched him right in the face. Who would have thought that would happen? Wasn't in the business requirement document, wasn't in the system requirement document, nobody ever tested it, but it happened. We couldn't replicate it in the lab. Customers weren't happy about that. What do you mean you can't replicate it in the lab? We think it's just a one-off, it's something weird. We don't know how this happened. But we still had to write a patch to put into the software, so that could never happen again, right? That happened in the process validation part of it. Who knew that was going to occur? You got to think about a lot of different stuff. And then mass production or manufacturing verification. That's when you make a whole bunch of whatever you're going to do to make sure it works. Every once in a while you should test it, right? This is boring stuff, but this is how products come to life. If you don't have CV, DV, PV, you don't have anything. Particularly if you're going to make something that might hurt somebody. And you should follow the same tenets for software. That's the thing I learned about running a company where we did as much software as we did hardware. There's a lot more to test in software, in my estimation, than there ever is in hardware. You can set this thing on the table and hit it with a hammer, and I can understand that. But software does stuff. It behaves differently under different conditions, and it takes an awful lot of testing to get that right. But that's what you do when you're developing. I don't care if it's a very simple product that doesn't have anything to do with hurting anybody. It's still the same cycle. And why am I saying all of this? This is that process I'm talking about. As CEOs, business leaders, entrepreneurs, you manage the process by which commerce becomes possible. Come up with something that somebody's going to want to buy. You got to develop it. You got to make it. And there it is. It doesn't matter if it's a service or a product. So you got to think about managing that process and how you're going to lead it. Yep. And that's the most important thing that you do there. So we've covered a bunch of topics. I can see your eyes are kind of glazing over a little bit. What else would you like to talk about while I am here? By the way, being a musician, we follow the same process when we're coming up with new material. It's absolutely hilarious. What do you guys think? My first plant manager job, I went in, it was a guy named Wolfram Ruppel, big German guy. And I was scared of him. His hands were huge. He was just a big guy. And he asked me, how do you handle stress? I'd never done a plant manager job in my life before, by the way. So I may know a little bit what it's like to sit there and go, gee, I'm interviewing for this job and I've never done it before. I don't know why you'd be talking to me and you're a big, scary guy. And my answer won me the job. Not that I said, I just didn't know what to say, and I figured, no, I'm not going to get this job anyway, so I'll just say what I think. I said, is anybody getting shot right now on your shop floor? What? I said, is anybody being killed today on the shop floor? I said, no. I said, well, that's stress. Anything else is just a bunch of details. If you can be a firefighter anywhere, and not sell your ability to prioritize, triage, and set direction in short periods of time and turn that into an interesting answer that somebody wants to ask another question from, then they shouldn't hire you. Yeah, because I can see about 1,000 answers that would make a lot more sense, at least more than one. But that's it. What are you hiring? You got a communication degree. It's like I got an engineering degree. I practiced for 6 months as a design engineer, hated every second of it. It's not what I do. So you got a communications degree. What do? You bring people together. You know what they need to do. You're great in difficult situations where time is critical, and you're able to achieve a goal. Fire goes out, everybody goes home. That's a skill set. Okay, so maybe the duration of what you want to do is a little bit longer than a fire, because I'd like to run your company. Same principles apply. I just have more time. Wouldn't it be cool to hire me because I'm going to have all the time in the world to do the stuff I used to do in milliseconds? I don't know. I'm exaggerating a little bit to make the point, but don't sell yourself short. Don't fabricate crap. There's so many times I have left an interview saying, no chance. This is not for me. This is insane. I know you asked me to be here, but no. This is so far afield of what I do. I'm not going to put myself in that kind of a position. And in the early part of my career, I wasn't in that kind of position. If I needed a job, I had to get a job, all right? And I took a bunch that I just shouldn't have done. That's probably why I left a lot of them, because I believe in staying in your lane. Well, what does that mean? You need to know what your lane is. So figure it out, write, talk to people, talk to yourself. Figure out what your lane is. What do you do? I don't care what your degree is in. What do you bring to the table? And if they don't need that, you don't want to be there. Yep. I don't have enough experience to say anything that would be just more than just opinions. So, you probably have to talk to somebody who knows more about that than I do. That's pretty specific. I write satirical humor pieces about human behavior. One of the things, my mother calls this a gift, I call it a curse. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, because from the time I was a child, I could feel things about people. Yes, and I remember when I was a child, there were places I could go, mirrors I would look in, I would see things. Sometimes they happened. Scared the crap out of me. Who do you tell, right? So because of that, and having that kind of empathetic magnet thing that I can feel about people, I'm a real student of human behavior, and I'm one of the more cynical people you'll come across. And I love poking fun, mostly at my own behavior, because I'm a creature of habit to a fault. My dear Beth would have been able to tell you how early I was going to be here and in what condition. I forgot Joy's name when I was here. I asked her, who are you? Because I was so famished about, I'm driving, I'm following Waze. I had 2 phone calls with 2 shareholders who want to know what we should do, and I can't pay attention to my directions, and I don't know where I'm going. And this mess out here this is a lot. There's a lot going on here in Tampa. and I'm not sure I'm going to make it home. Plus, I didn't park where I was supposed to park, and I figure my car is going to be gone. I am not a cup half empty guy or half full guy. It's half empty, it's cracked, it's leaking, it's ruining the table. The cops are knocking on the door because somebody thinks we stole it. I can go on, right? So that's what I write. Many have tried, but that's what I write about. It's like business. Write about what you know, right? I'm a rhythm guitarist. That's what I like doing. I do not try to be a fast finger guy. Looks cool, looks fun. It's not me. So I do what I do. But it took a lot of years to get to that comfort level. And all I'm trying to get across here is find that comfort level. Don't try to be something you're not. Which is hard to do in our world, isn't it? All you just have to do is look at the media. I have not touched social media in the last 2 years, and I feel a whole lot better. I don't really care what people are eating. I don't care where they're going. I'm not interested in how many likes I got. During COVID, I posted my little 13-pound dog and I doing yoga. We don't do yoga. I did yoga eating. I had Lena balancing on my shoulders while we ate watermelon. That was watermelon dog pose. So, that kind of thing. I stopped doing all of that because it's just too stressful. And what's out there, I can't live up to any of the expectations that I see on Facebook. I look at my idiot grandsons. I mean, these guys, these are 8 and 6-year-old dumb as stump boys doing stupid stuff, and they're fun because I can still take them. But I look at these pictures and they're all like, I go and see them, and the place is a wreck. It's a disaster. There's dog food all over the floor. Things are spilling. It's crazy. And I don't need to give the appearance that my life is really sharply put together because, you know what? I'm just a tired guy trying to make it through the day without it being a disaster. And that's pretty much sums me up. All right, anything else? Oh, go ahead. Yeah. So since I'm from Detroit, we used to play at a lot of the festivals and the casinos. When I'm down here, it's usually when my niece comes into town, we'll play a few shows. I live on Longboat Key, and so we'll play down there. We just did a couple of shows this weekend. She was in town, and it's a lot of fun. But it's, here's another thing, just in a second, more about the process. Lorelei, the singer, is a devil may care, I don't care what's going to happen, let's live life on the edge kind of a person who needs to rehearse. You can imagine little stress ball Steven over here is going to run the set list 648 times and wish he did it 649 times. She refuses to tell me which songs we're going to play. We have a 100-song catalog. What do you think that does to me? Right. We were playing for these people that were so excited to see her and all this stuff. And she turned to me and said, I want to do this song. She wanted to play Mr. Brightside by the Killers. And I said, no, wasn't on the list. Nowhere near the list. Haven't played it in years. Not touching it. And they think, oh, isn't that funny? I'm like, be serious. I'm going to start. You're going to play it. Because there's this, I don't know, is it the 3-chord part, the 4-chord part? I need to know that. But yeah, that's what she does. But when you see me, it is the most joyful thing I do in my life, and you can tell. I only smile. At Motor City Casino, we played there every month for 3 years. They used to refer to me as a smiling guitarist, and I'm like, oh, I got to get out there and be more rock and roll. But it just brings joy in my life, and that's why I do it. Couldn't do it for a living. Don't know that I'd want to. Think it might ruin it. Who knows? So, related to me? Not related to me. Boy, that's a tough question. Wow. I mean, the first person that comes to mind is a guy named Danny Ganga. You've never heard of him. He's just an incredible musician. He's an idiot. I mean, he's hard to be around. He just really is. But yeah, I'd like to be able to play more. Michael Hedges, if I had to pick a guitar player. He died some years ago. Incredible sounds. Yeah, that would be who I would say. I'd say Michael's probably it. Oh, great. Have you ever heard the word riff? Yeah, a riff is CB. So this is what I do. Laura and I will be over, and I'll be sitting in the corner, and I'll start running a little riff. So I have this idea. And she'll say, got any more? And I'll play some other riffs. And then she'll string them together, and then that's DV. Put those three together, I think I have a melody. We need a bridge and an ending, and then I think it's a song. That's PV. And then the customer validation is when we play it for somebody. It usually takes a while. But my job is to come up with a whole bunch of riffs, and that's what I sit around doing. That's how I spend my time. My dear Beth does not understand this, but she's not supposed to. She's not a musician. Sings terribly. Incredibly bad. What's that? No. When I was a TRW, I'll answer it this way. I had to go through a bunch of psychometric evaluations before I was given the executive position. It included 3 days of testing, problems, all this stuff, and a half a day where you're with a psychologist and you're just going to talk. Halfway through the half day with the psychologist, he sets his pencil down and he says, "Why are you here?" He says, "We're going off script. I'm not going to write any of this down. I'm just curious. I've been doing this for 30 years. Never have I seen someone so misplaced in my life." And I said, "Oh, that's easy. That's an easy answer." I pulled out my wallets before we had phones. I took out a picture of my daughter, and I said, "See, this is Elise. She has needs. That's why I'm here." So life kind of swept me. My career kind of swept me along. When I would get angry enough with what I was doing, to use a word, or dissatisfied enough, I'd leave. Or they'd figure it out and they'd send me home. So no, I didn't find any passion until 2009. That was when my executive career at TRW ended, and I started running companies that were disastrous, and that was fun because I didn't care if that's the wrong word, indifferent. You have to be appropriately indifferent, right? If you start caring, then your emotions get in the way of your decision making. You will make bad decisions every single time. If I'm indifferent, I will use data that I will turn into information through analysis to make decisions. And the first company, I didn't know anything about an airline. Rescue Jets was in serious trouble, owned by a friend of my dear Beth. He put his own jet into it, got 3 more, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And it was simply because he hired a guy who stole his money. Hired a guy out of Florida to run it. And just started embezzling money. Stole $1.5 million. 2 days into it, I figured out something was wrong. 3 days, he decided that he was going to leave. And that night he tried to break in because we changed the locks, and we couldn't figure out why would he try to break in. So we started going through the files, and we figured out that he had been stealing money from insurance companies by sending false bills for flights that had already been paid for. Did it on Friday nights because there's this thing called ERISA, and you can claim that it is a emergency situation and it has to be decisioned immediately, and they paid. And only because we found this stuff and started calling people were we able to present the FBI with a bunch of information, because it would cross state lines because his partner was in Arizona. Every once in a while you run into something like that. Now I thought this was pretty cool. This is interesting stuff. Terrible, terrible, terrible. We were able to restructure the company, keep it running for many years onward, but and I just started going and doing other things. It appealed to my, I don't want to stay anywhere long. I get bored really quick. And when I was younger, I used to go in interviews and say that wasn't true. And then my behavior betrayed me. Well, I'm older now, and I can say, don't do that. Figure out what you're good at and tell them. If they don't need it, you don't want to give it to them because it's going to go bad anyway. And if you're going to start a company, sit with people and ask them to be honest with you. What do you do? What do you like to do? What do you want to do? What are you willing to do? Those are all different things. They can be vastly different. But you need to know that to manage the resources. Now, my daughter is 37. She lives in Houston. She's the mother of the two knucklehead boys that are my revenge upon her. She's the first woman to ever be in the top finance job at ConocoPhillips. And I say, you got a finance degree because you just want to keep track of all the money you took from me. So I guess it worked out okay with that little picture that I held up. But one of the problems with being like me is you sort of make people like yourself. She's the most data-driven person. She doesn't give any assignments to any of her staff. She does everything herself. She's going to kill herself. Just stress herself out. She doesn't switch off. She keeps getting the highest ratings possible in her human resource reviews. And the only thing that the top level executives in that company ask her is can you please switch off? Okay, yeah, I know you better than that. She's never going to do that. I hope she finds her way because I can't tell why she's doing it. I only put that example out there. It's like, don't get caught up like me. I did a bunch of jobs I didn't want to do before I started doing what kind of seemed fun. I'm doing property management now for something to do because it's across the street and it's a friend of mine's company. It's a stupid job. People complain all the time. They want somebody else to fix the problem. I figured out how millennials got here. All the people I deal with are their grandparents, right? They want somebody else to do it for them. They want it done right away. They want to take no responsibility for themselves. And they want to complain about it. So then they had kids. And then they had kids. And that's how millennials happen. There's my theory. Maybe I'm right. I don't know. Any other nonsense I can share? All right. Thank you. It's been nice to be with you.